Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GinJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on a gloomy Tuesday, January 16th here in Duval County. We have got a brand new mock draft from the Athletics' Dane Brugler. We went over their most recent mock draft last week, but for me, Dane Brugler is one of the best and brightest minds in the draft sphere right now. So anytime that Dane Brugler is putting out content or talking on his podcast, the Athletic Football Show, you should be listening. Dane Brugler is excellent at what he does. And so I wanted to run through this 2-round mock draft in terms of what the Jaguars did in the first 2 rounds. As of right now, they do have a pick in the first and second round that could be impacted by their decision with Calvin Ridley if they decide to sign him to a long-term deal prior to the draft. They're going to be giving up a second-round pick instead of a third-round pick for Calvin Ridley. I don't personally expect that to happen. We will see how it plays out. But as of right now, again, the Jaguars do have a first and second-round pick, and we're going to go through what Dane Brugler has them doing here in his first 2-round mock draft of the 2024 NFL draft cycle. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content here, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out ginjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear, just drop some new holographic Leaping Jag stickers. You can go check those out. Again, ginjag.com/shop. So getting into it, right? Very interesting mock draft for me. I think both of the areas that he hits make sense. We'll start it off at 17 overall, where the Jaguars are picking as of right now, unless they decide to make a trade up or trade down. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver, LSU. This guy's 6'4". He's over 200 pounds. This would be an exciting pick. I think regardless of anything, this would be an exciting pick. The Jaguars, they do not have length. They do not have catch radius. They do not have game-breaking speed at the wide receiver position. I think that Brian Thomas Jr. can bring all of those things to you. He led the nation in touchdown catches last year. And of course, statistical production is not as important as just what you see from a down in, down out standpoint when you're evaluating the talent. But the fact of the matter is he can go up and get the football at a high level in contested catch situations in the end zone. The Jaguars do not have players that can do that right now. Again, 6'3", can probably leap 40 inches, if not close to it. Great catch radius, goes up and gets the football at a high level. He also has the ability to take the top off the defense, which the Jaguars don't really have at a high level right now. This is a guy that's probably going to run in the low 4.4s, maybe even 4.3s at that size, 6'4", 205 pounds. It's an impressive blend of traits, production, tape. It's a lot to like with Brian Thomas Jr. And for me, he's a little bit lower on my board than 17 overall. The reason being is because I do have some questions about the way he decides to attack the football in the air. I don't think he does it enough, quite frankly. I think a lot of times the ball just comes to him instead of him going and plucking the ball out of the air. I also think that from a route running perspective, there are questions. You don't see a full route tree in any way, shape, or form from Brian Thomas Jr. at LSU. It was primarily deep game stuff. You had mostly vertical playing, whether it's comebacks, vertical shots, some screen targets to him as well. I love the talent. I think that this would be a very exciting pick, as I mentioned. Do I think it would be a pick that I'm like over the moon about because I know that it's going to hit no matter what? I wouldn't say that. I think there's some risk involved, again, because you don't know what you have in terms of a guy that can run the full route tree. You don't have a guy that blocks at a very high level right now. You don't have a guy that gives full effort at a very high level right now. I think when he's not the primary target on a read, on a route, he doesn't always give full effort. So I think these are things you want to see improve as he, becomes a pro and gets more mature in his game. And I think that there are things that do concern me slightly, right? When I'm talking about a first-round receiver, I want somebody who has a fairly complete ball game. And right now, I think Brian Thomas Jr., while he does have the absolute game-breaking ability, the red zone ability to go up and get the football and catch touchdowns, and the Jaguars don't have either of those things, and that would be exciting. I just think as a complete receiver, as the total package right now, there's still some questions. Could those questions be answered very early on in his career? Yeah. I mean, I think that he could come in if he decides to give full effort as a blocker and as a route runner and as a non-primary target and a play. You could see Brian Thomas Jr. quickly become a clear alpha wide receiver in this league. But I just don't quite see that right now. And I don't think he has great physicality at this point. You know, he's over 200 pounds, so you'd expect him to be a guy that can play with some toughness, some physicality. I don't really see that. He's much more finesse at this point in his young career. We will see how it plays out for Brian Thomas Jr. But again, I'm just trying to give you the full picture of how I see this pick. I'm not at all saying that if they select Brian Thomas Jr. at 17 overall, I'll be disappointed. I won't be super disappointed because I think he brings a ton of things that the Jaguars absolutely need. I think he would be a big target for Trevor Lawrence to throw the football to. He has thrived with these big athletic targets down the field throughout his career, has not had that in Jacksonville. So I think it would be an exciting pick, but a pick that I would say this is a guy that clearly has some development to do in some key areas. And I think he should be able to develop. There's no doubt about that in my mind. So Brian Thomas Jr. at 17 overall, according to Dane Brugler from The Athletic there with the Jaguars' first pick. The other thing here is he has Keon Coleman falling past 17 overall. And I know that you look at these two prospects and you compare them, and you might want to say, well, Brian Thomas is faster. Brian Thomas has the ability to take the top off the defense. He's an unbelievable athlete. He's more exciting to watch, right? I think Keon Coleman has received a little bit of the nitpicking syndrome that we have from guys that, you know, at the beginning of the season, or you've been talking about them a lot, and then they don't quite have the finish to the season, and you nitpick them a little bit more than others. I think that's definitely happening to Keon Coleman. This is a guy that played through injuries late in the season, wasn't quite himself, was obviously dealing with injuries at the quarterback position as well. An offense that featured a ton of talent. They didn't need to feature Keon Coleman every single game, every single drive. And so I think Keon Coleman, he brings great athleticism at his size, and he is 6'4", 220. And I think he's going to run sub 4.5 at that size. I think that he actually plays with physicality. A guy that's 215, 220 pounds, he plays like it, right? He is able to use his size, his strength, both as a route runner, as a guy, at the catch point to go up and get the football, and as a blocker. Like, he is a much better blocker than what you're talking about with a Brian Thomas Jr. And why do I keep bringing up blocking? It's because the Jaguars ask their receivers to block, right? And I think that you've seen more of the route tree from Keon Coleman. I think you've seen the ability to be a legitimate 3-level threat versus just kind of a vertical guy. So I think there's a more well-rounded, more physical receiver that has better hands, quite frankly, in Keon Coleman that's still on the board. So would I pick Brian Thomas Jr. over Keon Coleman? No, but could I certainly sit here and say that Brian Thomas Jr. could develop into a freakier guy that takes the top off the defense a lot more and catches more touchdowns in the red zone? Yeah, sure. I could say that. I just think that Keon Coleman has a little bit more of a stable projection. Now, looking at 48, interior offensive lineman Cooper Beebe coming off the board out of Kansas State. A little bit of an older prospect. He's going to be 23 by the time the season rolls around, but a guy who has dominated at Kansas State at multiple positions across the line for them. He's played tackle, he's played guard, he's taken practice reps at center as well. So a guy, I don't think you project him at tackle at all at the next level. I don't think he has the physical profile for that from a length standpoint, athleticism overall. But I think you could probably draft him in the second round and plug him in at any of those interior offensive line spots. As I mentioned, dominant at Kansas State, a guy that does everything the right way, has the right hand placement, high and inside. He has enough athleticism to pull to get to the second level. Type of guy that's going to come in and be a stalwart on your interior offensive line at 6'4", 335 pounds. He has the sand in his pants that you don't currently have up front for the Jaguars. And, I believe he allowed less than 30 pressures over the last 3 seasons at Kansas State, 1 sack over the last 3 seasons at Kansas State, and that's moving around the line. I think that's really impressive. I think he has the size, he has enough athleticism, he has the grit, he has the positional versatility to play anywhere on the interior for you. So I think Cooper Beebe, if you're talking about landing him at 48 overall, I think would be a home run. And now, so You're talking about having a wide receiver in the first round that can take the top off the defense, be a red zone target for you, and then also a big time interior offensive lineman in the second round. So if this was your draft strategy, I would say in free agency, you probably needed to land a big time interior defensive lineman and at least one edge depth player. There are very good players in both of those capacities set to hit free agency. When you talk about interior defensive line, I do not think Chris Jones is leaving Kansas City, but he is scheduled to be a free agent. You've got Christian Wilkins, DJ Reader, Leonard Williams, a whole host of really talented interior players, Justin Madubuike as well, that are set to hit free agency. Of course, not all of them will, but hopefully a couple of them do, and then you can go get one of those guys. And then at edge, you've got Josh Uche, who has been a designated pass rusher throughout his career that you could bring in. You've got Bryce Huff from New York, who does the same thing at a high level. So I do think that you've got options. If this was the draft, first 2 rounds that took place, I would definitely hope that prior to the draft, you would have seen interior defensive line and edge addressed by the Jacksonville Jaguars. But overall, I think this would be really exciting, would offer a lot of upside in the first round, and a guy who's going to come in and be a stalwart for you for a long time in the second round, in my opinion. So I think you can't ask for a whole lot more than that. Again, I personally have Keon Coleman a good bit ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., but can I sit here and say for sure, without a doubt, that I'm right and this would be wrong? Absolutely not. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can check out ginjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. Y'all have a good one.